What's up, everyone? Andrew here. We're going to be building another trail today and an app from it. This one's going to be more complex than the Buy Me Coffee, the USDC payment trail we did last time. We're actually going to have multiple steps, and we're going to be using a lot more of the source node or read node functionality. So we're going to be using Clanker. Clanker is a token launch protocol. If you don't know what a token launcher is, if you've heard of Pump.Fun or Moonshot or any of these guys, that's basically just it's just launching a token so that anyone can go and trade it. All right, so Clanker, it's on Ethereum, or specifically, we're going to be using it on Base. They've launched over 300,000 tokens, done $3 billion+ of trading volume, and we're going to take the basic deploy token function on the contract and just continue to expand upon it. All right. So we're going to be doing this on Herd, right? So Herd is our Herd is our site. You go to herd.eco and then you can go to the Trails tab, and you'll start seeing a bunch of trails. These are your own trails. We're going to switch to all trails, and I can just go ahead and search for Clanker. You'll also see this one up here is the same one as like a hard-coded example. We're going to go to the overlook. Remember that every trail has a canvas side and an overlook side. The canvas is where it's actually being edited, and that's where you can fork it if you want to make changes to the trail. For most poor people, it's easiest if you just find a trail and then go and execute it. So this is the overlook, right? I can go and see there's going to be 4 steps here. I'm creating a split, deploying the token, and then collecting with rewards and something with withdrawal. And I can see that, I've already started. It's been forked 2 times. It's been used by 2 wallets, and they've done 6 transactions in total. Right? I can go here and see the transaction that someone else did. Right. So just high level, what we're doing here is we're creating a split, right? Because when you deploy a token, there's going to be a bunch of fees involved from trading and whatnot. So we're going to say, hey, I want to add me and a couple friends to a split to split the rewards by some percentage, right? So I could say it's going to be like I want to send part of it, like 20% to this address, right? And yada yada yada. So after that, we can deploy the token, which is just an image name and a symbol, and there can be some vesting involved if we wanted to vest like 10% of token supply. Can collect trading fees from it anytime, and then after vesting is been finished, I can go and withdraw it from the actual vault, right? So I could go and do everything in here, or I can go and build on top of our API, which again, don't be scared by an API. An API is going to be abstracted away from you by our guidebook, which is just a prompt, right? And so first we have to we have to select a trail app ID. So trail apps are literally just like an identifier that gets tied to your app so that any transactions going through it will kind of be attributed to your app. So then anytime in the future that maybe Clanker wants to distribute rewards to anyone that has built on top of them, they'll be able to see, hey, there's this token launcher app, which is this one here, which I'll show you in a second, or anyone could have come in here and like deployed 2 tokens, it looks like. And that'll be fully discoverable from the trail soon, and then paid out as well. All right. So that's why you'll want to be able to go and create a new app first. You can just add a name and come back and edit to add the description and link later. And we're going to just create a normal app, a web app, and there's a prompt, which is literally just a long LLM's text file. This is just a prompt for telling the LLM how to integrate with a Trail API and how to integrate with this trail specifically. Right, so you can plug that straight into v0, which is just as your v0.dev or .app, where you just paste in the prompt and then tell it what to build, right? And ultimately, it can take a lot of chats sometimes, like the coffee one, that is just one shot. This one, you can see there's been like 50 plus messages. Admittedly, a lot of that is just because this is an older trail, so I've had to keep it updated with a bunch of changes we've made. But you can see that it can take some time and effort with prompting to get things correct. But once you have it correct, then you have this fully working like app where I can say, hey, I want to go and deposit like 50% to Elemi, which is me, and then maybe another to like Vitalik. Right. And I could go and then create this split here. I'm not going to actually go send this on chain, but I could create the split and then I could deploy a token and then collect rewards and claim vested when it's done. Right. And I can also see two other people that have used this trail. One deployed this E token and someone deployed a iCar token. I could open this and see it on the Herd Explorer as well if I wanted to better understand what happened there. Right. So that's the app side. We'll have videos in the future more going into like the actual app building side, but today the rest of this video is actually going to focus on how we can build up the splits token trail from scratch. So you could, of course, go and view the canvas and then just go and fork the trail if you wanted to make, like, let's say you don't want splits in here. You could fork it, go delete the splits factory step, and then go and delete this event. And then you'll just have a normal Clanker token deployment. But we're going to actually just build this up completely from scratch. So before we get into the trail itself, just anything I say here that doesn't make sense to you, you can go to the documentation and go to the canvas creating trail side. The most important thing to know is that your trail is a linear set of write functions, so like functions you'll call to actually transact on chain. And then to the right of it, you're going to be able to see what are called source nodes. It's essentially saying, hey, there's data from some read function or some event or arbitrary code script where I want to be able to use that data in the main like primary step flow of the trail, right? And the key thing here is, and you can see here, there's a drop down for editing the inputs, but there's derive methods, right? So it's either create or hard coded, which means you set a value and it doesn't, like no one can change it, or it's user input where this is like, hey, I need the user to actually input this data. Or it's relational, which means it comes from an input or output on a function or on an event. Could be a read function, could be like a write function in terms of like, hey, the step one transaction you did had an output and we want to use that output, which we will do soon. User wallet, which just means uses the user's connected wallet address. Code is basically like relational in terms of like you're picking an input or output, but for code instead of for something on chain. And then encode call data, this is a more advanced one. It's common to have to encode call data from a write function to use in like a multi-call or something that's like kind of multi-call-esque inside of an actual contract write function. If that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. Again, it is more advanced, right? And other than that, you'll have to be aware of decimals. Decimals aren't actually on the ABI of the function, but we add it so that it's like easy for someone to say, hey, USDC is like, the amount is 6 decimals. So you can just input a human readable like number instead of having to like have a user input like the raw big int of like, I want to transfer 6 USDC, that's 600000000. And for arrays, nothing really that different about arrays except for we allow for defaults. So you can actually choose like the max length of the array, and you can also predefine like, you know, for more complex arrays that are tuples, maybe like 3 of the tuple values should be create or hard coded, and only 1 of them is user input. So we allow you to edit defaults for stuff like that. The last thing is read nodes. If you remember the Buy Me Coffee trail from last week, there's actually like a balance of here where this gets the user's balance and returns it as as an output. Because for building an app, you need to be able to read and write. So the balance of is not being used for a primary step, but it's important for like building an app or automation or anything else around it because it's very contextual data. So without further ado, we'll get into building the trail. So I'm going to go to Trails. I'm going to click a new trail on base. And let's just pretend that I didn't even have the other trail to look at. So I'm just going to go and search first for splits. And you'll see the first thing that shows up here is actually this protocol page, where I can go and open this up and see what contracts people have built the most or used the most from splits. I can go and read their documentation and whatnot. And the way that this usually works for things on chain is there's a factory that then deploys like an instance of something for you to use. So for like a token launcher, there's a token factory that you call that creates a token for you. And same thing here, there's a split factory that we can call to go and then create the split for us to use, right? So I actually want to use this push split factory. And you can see actually the trail we just created is actually in the context on the right here. It's still new trail because I haven't done anything. But I can go and add this in, and if we go back to the trail, you'll see this is now in memory, right? So I can actually start by adding a step, right? Remember that a trail is just a linear set of functions. So I can say, hey, I want to call the push split factory. And let's actually go to the contract page so I can better understand how it works. So I can go to the contract page. I'll see there's a create split and then create split deterministic. Let's just go to create split, where I can see it's like, okay, assigning ownership to some addresses. There's an event that's emitted, which will be important later. And then there's actually a bunch of transactions in here as well. And the cool thing we can do is if I go back to the trail, I could just add this step from the transaction directly. And that's the same as me saying, hey, I want to go and add this, right? Um, but instead, the difference is when I go and fill it from a transaction, I get all of that transaction data in here as well, right? And it's the same as like if you had added the step first, you can always go and pick a transaction that calls the function and load it in here. And then that will always make it so the inputs are going to be pre-filled with whatever was used in the transaction. So again, functions are just Google Forms, and what we do is we allow Trailblazer to kind of come in here and say, okay, I want the allocations to be this array where um, I know it's technically four decimals, and like, how do I know this? It's because if I go to the latest transactions calling this function, um, and let's say I look at split params and allocations. Well, I know that, well, this isn't a good example because there's only one recipient, but this one, for example, there's two recipients, two allocations. And I know that if you're allocating money, it has to add up to 100, right? So then that means that I just have to figure out the right decimals here for it to equal 100, which means it's actually four decimals, right? And the reason why there's decimals is just because on chain, like on Ethereum, you don't have a concept of decimals, so people add zeros as like padding. So if you wanted to represent like if you wanted to represent 1%, it would be like 1 times 1 E4, right? And that is actually 1% in this contract's case. If I wanted to represent like 1.5%, uh, then it looks like this, right? And so we, as the Trailblazers, try and make this easier. So I'll say percentage allocation ties to element, or not ties to, I can say it maps to element in recipients, where like 5.5% or 5.5 here is equal to 5.5%. And I'm writing an intent here, and this is both for humans and also for LLMs to better understand. And I'll say must total to 100%, right? Um, and then distribution incentive, I'm just gonna leave that alone. I'm not even gonna think about what that means. And the recipients, this is address that will receive the tokens. Intents aren't required, but it's a lot. It's very helpful to have. And then I'll just say, hey, deploy the split we will use in the token deployment. And you might be wondering, oh, well, why do we have to create a split? Why can't we just do this in the token deployment? Well, the answer is that the Clanker token deployment for 3.1 actually doesn't like there's only one reward recipient address. So it's not like I can go and add in a bunch of addresses, right? And this is how like contracts work, where like all the functions and logic are already hard coded on chain. So you can't just like change whatever you want. All right. Now let's search for Clanker. Again, there's a protocol page, but I will. Oops, that's not what I want. Open a new tab. I can see here there's this Clanker contract that's been called like 4,000 times in the last 24 hours. But it's possible that this is actually the V4 contract. And you might be asking, like, how the hell did you know that? Well, you wouldn't know that from just on chain. You would have to go to again, you'll see there's a Clanker label here as well. You can go to their documentation. So there's still a bunch of hopping around, and you could ask in the chat here as well. But in this case, we can go here. I can go to core contracts. I can even just look at deployed contracts, and I'll see, oh, version 3.1 is actually at this address. So I'm going to go and actually take a look at this contract. I'll see it's been called 1,000 times or 2,000 times in the last 7 days. And it looks like the two most called functions are deploying tokens and claiming rewards, right? So let's start with deploy token. Again, I think the easiest way to do this is just go and take the most recent transaction and just go and add it as a step here. And so now this is going to add deploy token as a step. You see it's the contract address for 3.1. And a lot of the variables here are already pre-filled.
And if you're wondering, like how do you know that this should be 10,000 or like this tick should be this? Normally, a good sense check is you can just look at some of the most recent called functions and then just look at the inputs. So you can see, like, oh, this uses negative 23 to 3040, which is what's used here. If I check a few other random ones, I'll be able to see, oh yeah, here it uses the same thing. Pool fee 10,000, minimum zero, you know. And so like you can kind of just sense check of like, all right, if everyone is using the same inputs across a lot of different calls, that's probably just like the default. And that's just fine to keep in there, and you don't have to adjust it unless you're feeling like more of a power user and want to try and adjust things more. Like I do see this one, the tick is like slightly different, but it's basically still in the same place. So
You'll see that we do some checks of like, okay, yeah, the admin should just be the user's wallet. We're not going to worry about some of the rest of this interface admin stuff. This is where, like, as a trailblazer, you could actually make some money yourself, where you could say, hey, I actually want to hard code this to like my address. And like same thing for the reward recipient. Um, and now you get into some fields that, should probably not be just hard coded. So you can say that the name should be a user input, the symbol should be a user input, metadata will come back to, the image should be a user input, and then this context is just for some tracking on Clanker's end. But I can just say it's heard whatever, leave the rest blank. And then people would probably want to put a description, and I can kind of see that there's already this like expected format for metadata. So I might as well stick to it. And what I can do is I will go add a code. I can say description. I think I already have code for this. So you can search across like your own code or like all code nodes. Let's see, there's actually one here already. And what this is doing here is it's taking some description in and outputting like this JSON format, right? If I want to put like this as a token, um, it'll go and get this back out, right? So we can just directly use this in here. I can say for metadata, I want the value to actually come from the code node. And for code, I'll say the description is user input. I'm saying this is the description for the token, right? And if you don't know how to write code, that's fine. There's a ChatGPT chat here. You can go and like click and then ask it. Like I can say, hey, here is an example JSON I want outputted where the input is the description. And so this is literally just, it's already pre-prompted by me, and you're just asking it, like, hey, this is what I want to give as an input to the node, and this is what I want as an output of the node. And you see that it kind of takes care of the rest. So you can just then copy that in here and then edit and save it. Right. I'm going to exit since it's already working. Um, and so this is a code node, right? So just to walk through like how this works when things are executed, ultimately the user is just going to see description. They're no longer going to see this metadata field, right? And the metadata field is going to be automatically filled with the value that comes out of here. And so this starts to get into the fact that like we treat everything in a trail as this like recursive data pipeline of like as people do things on chain through the trail or through other nodes, that data is carried into the main like main line of execution. All right, so let's just go and add the other thing here, which was the reward recipient. We actually don't want it to be the user wallet. We want it to come from the split factory. All right, so we called create split, which outputs a split address. So I can just say, hey, go and get the split address from the output of this function up here. You'll see I did things a little differently in the example trail where I actually went and checked the split created event and said, hey, for the split created event, get this event from the create split step in step one. And then I set it here, where is it? To say, hey, I want the not Clanker, the split created event, and I want the split address, right? And both ways are fine, all right? It's just a way for us to start easily pulling data across nodes, right? So now that we have that, all we have to do is now we can add claim rewards, right? And you're probably wondering, it's like, okay, like why do I know that it's claim rewards? Number one is just because I saw that claim rewards is the second most called function here. So I can actually just go and let's see what happens if I just fill in the transaction here. Well, this is going to fill in with a token, but this is actually someone else's token address, right? So this is not what I want. I want to make sure we are using the token that came out of the deploy function. And this is like a very common theme where it's like, okay, I know there's some data outputted from a previous function, whether that is outputted from the function directly, or if it is outputted by the an event on the function. There's many different ways of going about this. When I originally did this, I actually saw that Clanker has an LP locker contract, and LP locker has this collect rewards function. And so there's actually this token reward added event that is emitted when someone deploys a token, right? So if I, this is the wrong Clanker contract. If I go here and I go to deploy token, and if I look at, a recent transaction of a deployment, it's going to take a few seconds to load here as it LLM goes and processes the data. I can see that when we call deploy token, it creates a Clanker token. It also creates a new Uniswap v3 pool for trading. And here's a little summary of what happens. But I can actually see somewhere in here there, if I just search LP locker, yeah, um, there's like a token reward added, and I can see that there's a LP token ID in here. Um, and that is what I originally set here for the LP token ID. Um, Now you're like, oh, what does claim rewards do that's different? Well, technically, I can just go to the code and I can go and search the function claim reward. And this is like just a syntax thing where I know that in Solidity it's always function and then function name. So this is just an easy way for me to go and check things out. And if I go to claim rewards, I can see it's actually just calling blocker v2 collect rewards, right? And so this is technically how I figured out this at first. And I just put this in here because um, it was more intuitive for me at the time to just say, okay, let's call the LP locker directly. Um, Right. And so now this is going to claim rewards. We already have the token address in here. You'll notice, again, this input is different from the token ID that was used here, just because these are different functions technically. Um, and the last thing we need is if there was vesting. I didn't add any vesting to this trail because I set the vault to be 0. But technically, in this other trail here, we added this user input of duration of percentage where I added an intent that's like, hey, there's actually no decimals here. Unlike splits, which was 4 decimals, they just use basis points directly on the deploy token function. Again, how do I know that? Well, I can go and look at, you know, hopefully one of these has a vault. Come on. Just my luck to not have a single vaulted token. I'll check one more. If not, and here I'm just checking the input arguments, so that's easier for me to read. I could always check like I just search vault. Oh, yeah, even this, for example, I says max vault percentage is 30, right? And so I can just tell it's like, okay, 30, that must mean 30%. That means that there's like 0 decimals here. So if I wanted to do like 1.5%, I can't. I'd have to do 1 or 2. Again, this is not super intuitive, I would say. It definitely, if you're less technical or less familiar with the EVM, but we kind of built the Explorer to help help you navigate some of this in an easier fashion. Right. So all I did here is just like give the LLM some guidance. Like this is number of seconds till it's vested, and this is like maximum of 30 because I read the contract, and I tell the LLM, hey, 10 translates to 10% here. You can't add any decimals. Right. And from there, we have everything we need. Again, if we wanted to add vaulting, I could have checked here that there's a Clanker vault contract. I could have gone into the protocol page on Herd and searched like vault and seen, oh yeah, there's actually a few different vault contracts, but this is the right one. Um, and I can just paste the address in here and I can just see, oh yeah, there's a withdrawal function. What does the withdrawal function takes? It takes a token, an amount, and a two. And so then it's like, okay, well, how am I going to figure out the amount? The easiest way to do that is, well, let me just set the token first, since I know that the token is going to be the deployed token, and I know that I want it to be sent to my wallet. And so for the amount, I'm guessing, again, there's usually always a read function or event on either the like the Clanker contract itself or on the vault. So if I just look through here, see there's like a deployment info for token. Um, it's also a liquidity locker. Nope. Oh yeah, there's also this vault. Like this would have also given me the vault address. Um, I mean, hey, let's see what happens if I. Where's the transaction? I think I accidentally I got rid of the transaction. Was it this one? And the deployed token was this guy. All right, so I can take this in here and let's see what happens. Gives me the token, gives me the locker, the possession ID. Doesn't actually give me the amount that was vested. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually go and check the vault itself. Oops. And so if I go to the vault contract and I look at read, I can see there's actually allocation. And if I read it, I can see that there is an amount here, there's an end time, and then there's an admin for it. So cool. I know that I can just use the allocation read function. So I go to Clanker Vault allocation. I'll add this as a source node, where the address here for allocation is supposed to just be the token address, right? Yeah, the token address. So that means, again, we go relational, where I say, hey, I want to get the token address here, and I'm going to use this relational to get the amount. So again, there's the Clanker vault, there's the allocation read function, and then the amount. And I'll also say that this should be a read API because you want to check that end time has been reached before you are allowed to claim your vested tokens. Um, right. Actually, I put it on the wrong one. I meant to put it here. And this is just claiming your vested tokens. And you'll see these two still have yellows because I haven't put a description, but that's fine. You can publish without it. All that's left is I can go and name this as like deploy token with a split, blah, blah, blah. I can save it, and then I could click publish, and it will give me the ability to then where did my intro go? It'll give me the ability to then go to see an overlook. I'm not going to go and publish a duplicate trail. You can just use this one for reference, where I can then use the guidebook again to build off of that trail. Anyone else can also build off that trail or also execute. Um, Completely up to them. And yeah, that's it. That's everything you need to create a four-step trail on Clanker for using splits, deploying a token with also like vesting and reward collection and fee collection, etc. That can then be just easily used by anyone else, right? And again, if you don't want to create a full app around it, if this is already enough for you, you can share this as a web page or on Farcast or as a mini app, and anyone can then just use it there as well. And you'll be able to see like who's used it to do what, um, and all of that fun stuff as well. So yeah, in this little tutorial, we learned how to navigate a bit more about the Explorer, looking specifically at like a bunch of different transactions and functions to get a lay of the land. And then we learned to use write functions, obviously, read functions. We did a bit of I showed you how to use an event as another option instead of the read functions. And then, yeah, that's really it. Hope you've learned something. We're working on making this easier, and we'll be having more and more examples in the near future as well. So happy trailblazing.